Hey guys, Andy Yen, Spoken Label. My friend, the fantastic Emma Smith. Straight over to Emma now. Should we tell people, Emma, how many poems you're going to do today or leave them in suspense?
I don't like leaving people in suspense. As an
Okay, what's
autistic person, I like to know exactly what's going on.
yeah,
So I'm going to read three poems today.
brilliant. You have a friend, Charlotte Falconbridge, who's on Spoken Label next week. Podcast is out then. But she'll be out the time this goes in live. She was telling me exactly the same thing when I spoke to her a couple of weeks ago. So yeah,
Well, there you
I
go.
know. So yeah, listen, Emma. Anyway, less of me, more of you. So over to you, my friend. Oops, is it? Yeah, I'm gonna hit the wrong button then. For your first piece.
Thank you. So this is a poem called I Have Been Her Kind, and it's a poem that I wrote after the poet Anne Sexton, who, yeah, along with Sylvia Plath, is quite a big influence of mine. I really, relate to her work. So this is the poem. I have been her kind, strange and unafraid to be alone, afraid to cross the threshold into unknown air, known to stew as sour despair stirs up like a cauldron's contents. I have been frayed, nerves bitten down, chewed like wires under floorboards by rats with the proudest tails. I have been flattened by time, by a world so fast, I cannot run behind it. I have known what it's like to exist only in whispers. I have been too tired to speak in the literal sense. I have been incensed each time that I stepped outside, that it offered no way to unwind the spool of me. It's only inside that I find peace between these lines and the blank spaces they leave.
Great start there indeed. That one I really, really enjoyed that. I was going to ask you in the first part of the podcast, did you like Anne Sexton's work? Because I mean, I know a lot of writers that would you've been really got into Sylvia Plath's work, and Sexton sometimes a next good next choice for it. And I feel
Yeah.
sorry for her really because they were friends, weren't they, in real life? And like I think she's always afraid of being in the shadows of Sylvia Plath. I think that unfortunately probably led to what happened to her later on in life as well.
Yeah, I think it's quite sad actually with a lot of these female poets that seem to really struggle with their mental health. Both Sylvia Plath and Anne Sexton had bipolar disorder. And you think, if they were born in this time and they had access to the resources and the medication that we have now, because I know personally for me, medication's been a life changer as well as therapy, that they might not have taken their own lives and they might have gone on to write more amazing poetry.
Yeah, it's part of the tragedy really with writing that sometimes when you look at the way we are in 2024, we know a lot more about ourselves as people, the way our
Mm.
brain moves and everything about ourselves than tragically in the 60s when it was almost like a naughty word sometimes it was and yeah, true. So
Yeah,
anyway,
well,
anyway, less of me, more of you. Let's get back to you. I could talk about Sylvia Plath all day and have a good fist at Anne Sexton, but this is not the podcast for
yeah, you're speaking my language now. I was just about to
that.
go into how, they had to spend time in mental institutions. And I'm thinking, gosh, yeah, how things have changed, luckily for women in some ways, but not in every way.
Anyway,
Um, so next poem is called Clarice slash the Metamorphosis. And just a slight content warning, there are some themes of death and horror in this poem. A single tear close up of my face, in which I admit that I miss my father, so that a man might kill for me, then wear his coffin clothes, arrange the bed with all his bones, and lead my hand around the room. Once I lay curled in the anxious cocoon of my mother, half cooked, metamorphosing. My father, in a deep red cinema seat, prized the fingers from her eyes. He was out for blood. I would morph into Clarice, armed to my gleaming teeth. So when you bite into the cold white apple of my cheek, I shrug on her skin like autumn chic and raise the dead men from their sleep.
Again, really strong piece. That now, obviously, what's the inspiration behind this story then? This piece.
Well, I am a big fan of the movie franchise Silence of the Lambs. The
Thought so, thought so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a that was an inspiration for me. But also my mum told me a story of how that film came out the year that I was born, in 1991. So my mum told me a story of her being, dragged by my father to go and watch that film when it came out at the cinema, and she hates anything like that. She doesn't like horror films or anything, but he was, really, really, really keen to go and see it. And it was this feeling of like her really not enjoying herself and kind of recoiling from the film, and him being completely kind of unaware of the effect that it was having on her was a bit of a metaphor really for their relationship. But also there's this scene in one of the Hannibal books where Hannibal actually you know digs up Clarice's father, and does what is described in this poem as a kind of romantic gesture. So that was another a piece of inspiration, and sort of just thinking about dads and the impact that they have on us, and this feeling of missing someone who was never really there, and kind of feeling like you would do anything to bring them back while knowing that they're sort of dangerous and they can hurt you. But yeah.
No, it's a great piece. Really, I really enjoyed it. And I was the art in some of you hear people doing poetry, and I instantly thought to myself, is this Khalees from Silence of the Lambs? And I thought, no, I'll let you tell me. So perhaps a surprise there.
Yeah, she was like kind of my bisexual awakening. I had a crush on
Fair play to you there. So it's ironic actually, because I've not seen all the films. I've seen Silence of the Lambs. I love Manhunter, the one that came before it. Not Red Dragon, the film, Manhunter. And she's not in
Yeah,
that one at all, and I love
she's
Manhunter.
not. No, no.
Manhunter is terrifying because Brian Cox
Yeah,
scared
it's really scary. I've seen
Brian
all of that.
Scott
Yeah, really
scared the
scary.
shit out of me when I saw that one at the time. So
Yeah.
but people wonder that's why I don't really rate Ike Anthony Hopkins as much in it, 'cause he's great, but and Brian Cox is just an absolute monster in it. So that's the difference, I think. But yeah,
They're
but,
both
but
terrifying.
yeah, agree in different ways. So anyway, lesson me more of you, and we're off to people wondering how if you can count. We're on the third piece now. So this is I'm not putting Emma under pressure. This is the big finale. Take it away, my friend.
So this is actually a new poem that I've written recently, and it's sort of part found poem from a an Observer article that was published in 1977, which was about the Enfield poltergeist. So it was, basically about this house where there was a family where the dad had recently left, and there was two teenage girls, and they had basically gone to the press and the police and said that there was a poltergeist in their house. And reading this article was really interesting just because of the way that it was written, obviously then in 1977, and how it was trying to kind of sensationalize this idea that maybe there's a ghost in this house, while still saying, we don't really believe this kind of working class family who are trying to get attention. Um, and it reminded me of growing up as a teenager. I was very sure that I had a ghost in my bedroom. And it was just interesting. I started reading about this idea that, poltergeists or ghosts will often appear when girls are about to go through puberty. And there's something there about, is it that there's some sort of energy shift, or is it that, girls are, young people are in this really difficult phase of life, and it's a way of kind of reaching out and getting attention, or wanting to feel that there's more to life than there is. And I think I felt an affinity with the story because my own dad had left and I'd had a similar experience. So it's part sort of this article from 1977 and part my own experience. So it's called Knock Knock. It begins as is apparently the way it began for me that day. More rhythmic tapping noises and the wrenching away of boredom, of play. Marbles and pieces of Lego cast across the room, hurled out, making way. No one had thrown them. No one had picked me up that day. They disappeared of their own accord, fathers, didn't they? And that wasn't all. Chairs were pushed along the floor, posters slid down walls. At night, my cup picked up, lights on. They say two things excite them. Girls are said by some authorities to be vulnerable during puberty to the attention of ghosts. They say traces of maladjustment in the family will attract poltergeist phenomena. But something inexplicable wouldn't happen that way. It's just another family looking for a new council house. It's just another girl looking for someone who will stay.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful piece. That. What's good about that one, Emma, as well, is I think it's quite. I'm right with this. It's quite a bit shorter than the other two pieces, wasn't it, as well?
Yeah, I think because of the found poetry, like because it's actually quite short. I mean, looking at it on the page and it's quite long on the page, but there aren't that many words in it.
Yeah, thought so.
So yeah,
I
you're
think
right.
I think we better tell people, obviously, 'cause not everybody knows what a found poem is. I've done them, and some have been a lot easier than others to write. So we bet should we tell people what a found poem is first of all?
Yeah, sure. So a found poem is basically a poem that's made out of the text of another piece of content or a written document. So that can be anything from, like a newspaper article like this one, or you can create found poetry from other poems, from prose, from stories. I've seen a really great found poem in Catherine O'Driscoll's collection. I can't remember the name of the poem now, but she wrote a found poem that was made from extracts of a PIP application. So the application that people with disabilities will often make for personal independent payments. And that was really, really effective. So yeah, it's just kind of borrowing text from another source and arranging it in your own creative way.
Yeah, it's fascinating indeed. So, like, it's what led you to this 1977 article in The Guardian? And because that's it sounds a bit random that you've gone found an article from
It does sound
1977.
quite random, yeah. I think if you live inside my brain, it makes sense, but to a lot of other people, it doesn't. So I think, as you'll probably notice, there's a lot of references to sort of ghosts and sort of otherworldly sort of phenomena in a lot of my poems, and I think part of that is a reckoning with grief and death and this feeling of wanting there to be something on the other side. And it's one of those things I was talking about earlier where that's always been a part of my personality. I've always been interested in those sort of phenomena. I've always been interested in kind of ghost stories and true crime, and a lot of that will make its way into my poems in various ways. And this was an assignment for the poetry school course that I was on, where they were asking us to write found poetry, and I just happened to be listening to a podcast at the time, which was about this case, which was about this Enfield poltergeist that was reported in all the newspapers back in the 70s. And, there was this family living in a council house who suddenly became famous because the two teenage girls had said there was a ghost. And like I said, I found that there were parallels between that story and my own life that I really wanted to explore. I've actually written poems before about this ghost that I had in my room as a teenager. And
Oh, oh,
but none of them have been published, or none of them have made their way to Instagram because I just haven't quite got it right. So this was my way of like sort of trying to figure out my feelings about it.
no, excellent stuff. You can tell me more about his ghost story off mic in a minute. So 'cause we're not going to obviously ruin the poem, so we'll do it off mic, and I'll tell you my ghost stories as well, because I've got a few, right? Some that
Lovely.
are definitely not I'm going to wear, right? But listen, Emma, it's been a pleasure today. I really, really enjoyed this. So keep in touch because I'd love to have you on again in the future, definitely if you're ready for it. So, but anyway, hang around because we're going to talk more off mic anyway. So. Anyway, guys, goes, yeah, that's it for today for another fantastic episode of Spoken Label. Thanks again to Emma Smith. It's been a
Thank
great
you so
chat
much.
today. I really enjoyed this. So as Don Callis over at AEW Wrestling says, folks, stay safe and stay over, and we will see you all next time.